Can you imagine being shamed into funding a wedding you didn't even want to attend? Let me take you back to the night I lost control of my finances because of family. And the worst part? I smiled through it like I had a choice. The thing about being the reliable one in a dysfunctional family is that your silence becomes everyone else's excuse. They assume your quiet nod means yes, your pursed lips mean approval, and your hesitation? That's just another invitation to take more. I'm Elizabeth, 37, bank analyst, proud owner of 2 cats, and a dwindling savings account. And on that rainy Saturday night in our perfectly average Ohio suburb, I officially became my family's financial scapegoat. It started at the dining room table, maple wood, inherited from Grandma Louise, and always a little sticky from the citrus polish my mom swears by. The whole family had gathered for Amanda's engagement celebration. Amanda, my 29-year-old sister, forever the golden one with glittery dreams and zero concern for spreadsheets. She clinked her wine glass with a spoon, her cheeks flushed with excitement, and announced her wedding plans. We're thinking late September. By the lake, with a violinist during the vows, and maybe a drone for aerial footage. She giggled like it was the most adorable idea ever, and to her credit, it was. For someone else's wallet, I kept my face neutral, just like always. Mom gasped, "Oh, darling, that sounds magical," while Dad leaned back in his chair with that glint of self-satisfaction he always wore when Amanda spoke. "Whatever my little girl wants," he said, voice full of pride. "She's going to have the wedding of the decade." Then came the twist. "And," Amanda added, glancing at me with that same butter wouldn't melt expression she's perfected since we were kids, "Elizabeth and I talked, and she's going to help cover half the costs." Wait, what? I blinked. My fork stalled mid-air. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. She kept talking about tent rentals, champagne fountains, and custom lighting, as if the thing she'd just said was not completely fabricated. My mom nodded approvingly. Dad raised his glass. And I said nothing, because everyone was looking at me with that expectation. The unspoken rule had always been, if Elizabeth can do it, she will. And if she doesn't want to, she should anyway. I forced a smile so tight it hurt. "We'll work out the details later." Inside, I was screaming. I hadn't agreed to anything. Amanda had casually dropped a financial bomb on me in front of the entire family. And now, my non-reaction had been accepted as confirmation. That's how things worked in our household. Passive manipulation dressed as family bonding. After dessert, Amanda pulled me aside. "Thanks again, Liz," she whispered, looping her arm through mine. "It means so much. I just knew you'd say yes. You're always the steady one. The steady one. The responsible one. The reliable sister who bails out parents, co-signs student loans, and shows up early to assemble IKEA furniture." I drove home that night, gripping the steering wheel like it might break, my breath shallow, my stomach in knots. And yet, even in my fury, I knew what I was going to do. I was going to go along with it. Because at that point, I still believed that keeping the peace was worth more than my bank account. I was wrong. You'd think agreeing, under pressure, to help fund your sister's wedding would at least buy you some gratitude, maybe a thank you card, a text, a hint of consideration. Instead, I got a bill for fireworks. The next few weeks felt like a quiet unraveling. Every day after work, I'd come home to a new receipt slipped under my door or stuffed in my purse at a family gathering. No discussion, no questions. Just lines of charges tied to me. Deposit for horse-drawn carriage, $450, paid by Liz. Fireworks display permit, $225. Liz to reimburse. Live band minus $1,800 hold on card. Elizabeth's approval. Except I never approved any of it. It started with my dad, Robert, retired contractor, part-time backyard philosopher, and full-time legend in his own mind. He'd once built a gazebo by hand and declared himself a visionary. I grew up believing he could do anything, fix any leak, smooth over any problem with that easy smile. But lately, that smile had a different edge. It carried assumptions now, that I'd say yes, that I owed it to the family, that I'd clean up the mess so Amanda could ride into marriage on a glittering white stallion. The first time I confronted him was gentle, too gentle. "Hey, Dad," I said, handing him the invoice from a company called Northern Pyro Celebrations. "This says I approved a fireworks show?" He was trimming hedges, looking proud of himself like always. He didn't even look up. "Yep, should be amazing. End of the night display right over the lake. Big send-off for Amanda and Carter. Right, but I didn't approve this. Or pay for it." He finally glanced at me. "You said you'd help." "I said I'd help with the wedding. I didn't say you could start charging luxury add-ons to my name without asking." He chuckled, like I'd told a joke. "Come on, Liz, don't be stingy. You're doing well. And this is her only wedding." I stared at him. That's when I felt it. The click in my chest. A warning. Something snapping into place that wasn't ready to break yet, but was starting to bend. "But shouldn't we talk first?" He waved me off. "Amanda wants the carriage too. I already booked it. No refund now, but it's worth it. Wait till you see the look on her face. You'll understand." It hit me later how many times I'd heard him say that in my life. "You'll understand. You're the strong one. She deserves this." Always a reason why Amanda's desires were urgent and mine were optional. When I mentioned it to Mom, she dismissed me before I could even get to the second receipt. "Let your father have this, Elizabeth," she said, slicing cucumbers with militant precision at the kitchen island. "He's just excited, and Amanda's his baby girl. Every father wants to make her day special. I'm not saying he can't be involved," I replied carefully. "I'm saying he's spending my money without asking." Mom sighed dramatically, as though I were exhausting her by existing. "Why do you always have to make things so transactional? It's not about money, it's about family. You're not married, no kids, no big expenses. You can afford to be generous." She said it like generosity was my job, like I'd chosen singlehood just to serve as the family bank account. I wanted to scream, but I didn't, not then. Instead, I nodded. I let it pass. I even found myself apologizing, again, for making a big deal, because that's what I'd been trained to do: smooth things over, absorb the discomfort, be the buffer between my parents' unchecked desires and the reality they refused to budget for. But inside me, something had started to calcify, a quiet, anger-building root. The day the carriage showed up for a test drive in our cul-de-sac, neighbors came out in robes and slippers to gawk. My dad waved from the sidewalk like he was directing a parade. "Check it out, Liz," he yelled. "They threw in the flower-trimmed canopy for free." I stood in the window, a knot forming in my stomach. I hadn't just lost control of my budget, I'd lost ownership of my boundaries. And no one, not Amanda, not Mom, not even Dad, seemed to think I had a right to speak up. But I would. They just didn't know it yet. I've been to hundreds of brunches in my life, some bland, some boozy, some unforgettable for all the right reasons. But none haunted me like Amanda's bachelorette brunch. It was supposed to be a light-hearted, mimosa-drenched affair at a trendy rooftop cafe downtown. Sun-kissed laughter, waffles shaped like hearts, bottomless bellinis, the usual Instagram-ready celebration. But for me, it became something else entirely. I arrived 15 minutes early, because punctuality is my curse, wearing a soft pink blouse I'd second-guessed 3 times in the mirror. As I waited near the hostess stand, Amanda swept in with her signature late-but-loved charm, waving, smiling, air-kissing every friend like royalty entering her court. Amanda has always had this magnetic pull. She doesn't walk into a room, she arrives, and the world adjusts accordingly. She flounced over, clutching a glittering bride-to-be sash and a sequined purse that looked more like a party favor than a bag. "Lizzie!" she beamed, using the nickname I hated. "You're early, as always. You're seriously the most reliable person I know." I smiled, though the compliment tasted like cardboard. We were seated at a long table, draped in white linen and sprinkled with metallic confetti. There were 12 women in total, old sorority sisters, Carter's cousin, her work bestie, some bridesmaids I'd met once in passing. I didn't quite belong, but no one seemed to notice or care. The first sign this brunch wasn't for me came when the waiter brought out personalized menus labeled Amanda's Inner Circle Brunch. My name wasn't on the list. I'd been penciled in, literally, Elizabeth, sister, in blue ink at the bottom. I tried to laugh it off. but my stomach tightened. Midway through Eggs Benedict and sparkling toasts about finding your forever person, I excused myself to the restroom. That's when I heard it. I turned the corner of the hallway and froze. Behind the half-closed door of the coat room, voices trickled out. Amanda's unmistakable laugh, followed by a high-pitched whisper. She's sweet, but honestly, it's sad. 37 and still solo? Oh my God, I know. Someone else chimed in. She's like, reliable but invisible, you know? The kind of woman who sends spreadsheets instead of selfies. More laughter. She'll probably end up being the cool aunt who funds everyone's college funds. She's practically there already. Amanda said she's paying for half the wedding. At that moment, I didn't feel 37. I felt 14. Hiding in the hallway, stomach churning. Heartbreaking in that uniquely quiet way reserved for adult humiliation. Because I wasn't just being pitied. I was being dismissed. And the worst part? They weren't wrong about my role. I was paying. I was reliable. And I was single, with no kids and no dramatic love story to flaunt. But I wasn't invisible. Not yet. I took a shaky breath and stepped away, before I could hear more. When I returned to the table, I slid into my seat like nothing had happened. I smiled, nodded, rejoined the group toast. To Amanda! Someone cheered. For doing it right while others, well, take their time. A few heads turned toward me. Not in cruelty, just in that passive, polished way women do when they're ranking each other's life timelines. Amanda raised her glass. To my forever, Carter, and to every woman brave enough to believe in big love. I clinked my mimosa glass, smiled politely, and swallowed everything I wanted to scream. That brunch taught me something. I'd always assumed I was being helpful. That funding things, fixing things, managing things quietly in the background made me valuable. Indispensable even. But now I saw it clearly. They didn't admire me for it. They barely saw me at all. That day, something started to shift. Not loud or dramatic, just a quiet tilt of the earth beneath me. The kind that doesn't announce itself, but changes your path forever. I should have known something was wrong the minute I opened my bank app. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind that slips by without ceremony. Rain tapping against the windows, leftovers reheating in the microwave, the kind of night you think nothing of until it changes everything. I'd been sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop open, bills spread out like a deck of cards. It was just supposed to be a routine check, a transfer here, a scheduled payment there. But something wasn't adding up. My auto payment to the family house mortgage had always been a placeholder, a relic of a time years ago when Dad was between jobs and I offered to help for a few months. But the transfer was still active. That wasn't the problem. The problem was the amount. It had doubled. 3 months ago. I blinked, heart skipping, and pulled up the last 6 months of statements. Slowly, methodically, I started to piece together the puzzle, feeling the familiar chill of realization spread across my shoulders. Each month, I'd sent in a payment from my personal checking account, but starting in January, the amount had nearly doubled. And the worst part? The recipient was still listed under Shared Family Trust Account, the one my father controlled. My hands went cold. Something told me not to call right away. Something deeper than suspicion. Instinct, maybe. Or the quiet wisdom that comes when you've been taken advantage of too many times to ignore the pattern anymore. Instead, I dug deeper. I pulled out the dusty binder where I kept my mortgage reference files. I reviewed the loan summary, the old statements, even the original terms we'd reviewed together years ago. The monthly mortgage hadn't changed on paper. No rate hikes. No escrow shifts. So why was I paying nearly double? Then I checked the address tied to the payments. It was still the house. My parents' house. The home I grew up in. The one Amanda was now using for bridal photo shoots and cake tastings. I felt the blood drain from my face. The only possible explanation? My father had stopped paying. Completely. And rather than telling me, or anyone, he had simply let my automatic transfers cover it. Without consent. Without a word. I sat back in my chair. Stunned. My childhood dining room flashed in my mind. That night weeks ago, when Dad raised a glass and Amanda beamed about me helping with the wedding. He wasn't just using my money for the ceremony. He was using it to keep the roof over their heads. And hiding it like a secret he assumed I'd never uncover. I felt rage. But worse than that, I felt shame. Because deep down, a part of me had always known something like this could happen. and I had still let it. For years, I'd been the quiet daughter with the good job, the steady paycheck, the one who didn't need much. That image gave them permission to treat my boundaries as optional, to make decisions in my name, and I had allowed it, smiled through it, justified it as family stuff. But this was theft. Financial, yes, but also emotional. He hadn't just taken my money, he had taken my trust. I stared at the screen for a long time, long enough for my leftovers to go cold and the rain to stop. Then I opened a blank spreadsheet. I began typing, month by month, payment by payment, every dollar sent, every silent deduction, every little betrayal masked as just helping out. My fingers trembled, but I didn't stop. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't just keeping records, I was collecting evidence, and that meant something was about to change. There are moments that split you wide open, moments that walk in, uninvited, and rearrange what you thought you knew about who you were to your own family. For me, that moment came under a white silk tent, strung with fairy lights, between a champagne flute and an overcooked filet mignon. Amanda's wedding day. It was exactly what she'd dreamed of, down to the last glitter-dusted macaron. The venue, a lakeside estate in the kind of zip code where even the trees look manicured, was buzzing with photographers, florists, and at least one guy in a headset shouting into a walkie about the carriage delay. Yes, the horse-drawn carriage arrived late. My father nearly threw a tantrum over it. I had spent the whole day in a tight navy blue dress I hadn't wanted to buy, holding a smile that barely stayed put. When Amanda walked down the aisle, everyone gasped. Her gown shimmered like 1,000 tiny diamonds, and her face, radiant, tearful, perfect, beamed under the veil. She looked beautiful. I won't lie. She also didn't look at me once. During the reception, I kept busy. I took photos, held purses, helped Grandma to the restroom. I dodged questions about when I'd finally settled down, and politely declined more champagne than I could count. I even managed to keep it together through the toasts. The best man speech was full of predictable bachelor party anecdotes. Amanda's college roommate choked up halfway through hers, and my mother dabbed at her eyes like a supporting actress auditioning for sympathy. Then Dad stood up. He was already tipsy, his cheeks flushed, his tie loosened. My stomach dropped the moment he took the mic. That kind of sixth sense you develop when you know exactly how far someone can go, when no one dares stop them. He tapped the mic once, twice. Feedback squealed. "Everyone having a good time?" he slurred, drawing polite laughter. Then he turned toward Amanda, who was seated beside Carter, glowing like a princess in candlelight. "I just want to say, I've never been more proud." His voice trembled slightly, then steadied. "Amanda, you've always known what you wanted, and you went for it. You didn't wait around. You built a life, a future. You're carrying on this family in the best way possible." He raised his glass. To Amanda, the only one who truly carried on the family name right. Silence, then cautious clapping. A few chuckles. Someone whistled. My face burned. I heard it like a slap. The only one who carried on the family right. Not a throwaway line, not just a drunk dad babble. It was a declaration, a public statement, that I, his firstborn, his silent helper, the woman who had practically financed this circus, was a disappointment. Amanda's eyes flicked toward me. She didn't look surprised. Carter stared down at his plate. Mom looked away. No one said a word. No one stopped him. And that was worse than the insult. That was the confirmation. I stood quietly, excused myself, and walked out of the tent. The air was cool, merciful. I made it as far as the tree line before my legs gave out. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat still. While inside, the music started up again, and people laughed, and Amanda danced her way into a new chapter, built on debts no one would acknowledge. Let them. Because I finally understood something that night. I had been invisible for so long they'd forgotten I could see, and that meant they'd never see me coming. The morning after the wedding felt like the world had tilted slightly on its axis. I hadn't slept. Not really. I'd spent most of the night at my small apartment, sitting on the edge of my bed, still in that navy blue dress. Too wired to unzip it, too numb to cry. The words kept replaying in my head like a broken tape loop. Only one who truly carried on the family right. You'd think that, after all the subtle dismissals, all the silent sacrifices, I'd have grown a thicker skin. But no amount of emotional calluses prepares you for the moment your own father stands in front of 150 people and tells them, with a toast, that your life doesn't count. Still, I was determined to stay quiet, for now. Then came the sheriff's letter. I'd dropped by the house that morning, out of obligation, mostly. Someone needed to check on things. Mom and Dad were supposed to have stayed the night at a nearby hotel. Amanda was off somewhere on her mini-moon, and I thought I'd slip in, grab a few things I'd left behind, maybe feed the cat, if no one had remembered. The envelope was stuck in the front door, torn slightly by the wind. Thick, official. My name wasn't on it, but I recognized the county seal immediately. Final notice, foreclosure warning for unpaid property taxes. I froze. My first instinct was denial. This had to be a mistake. They couldn't have gotten that far behind. I'd been helping, I'd been paying. My transfers were steady, generous, quiet. My second instinct? Rage. I stepped into the kitchen and grabbed the folder where Dad usually kept the house bills. It was practically empty. No recent mortgage statements, no tax notices, nothing filed past the spring. I rifled through drawers, even peeked into the dusty office off the living room, where his old desk sat buried under birthday cards and loose receipts. That's where I found it. A pile of unpaid tax reminders. The final one, rubber stamped in red. Foreclosure Indiana 15, days if balance is not remitted. The balance? $4,718.72. It wasn't an impossible sum, not catastrophic. But combined with the wedding expenses, the maxed-out credit cards I'd already been guilted into covering, and the thousands I'd sunk into that house over the past year, it was the last straw. I sat down on the edge of the couch, the tax letter crumpled in my lap, and stared at the room I once considered home. All my life, I'd been the patch, the buffer, the safety net beneath their poor planning and impulsive decisions. And now, they were falling hard, and I was supposed to break that fall again? Not this time. I was still sitting there, stealing my resolve, when they walked through the door. Mom entered first, heels in hand, makeup smudged. Dad trailed behind her, silent, sunglasses still on despite the overcast sky. They both froze when they saw me. "Oh," Mom said, straightening her blouse, "I didn't know you'd be here." "Neither did the sheriff," I replied flatly, holding up the letter. Dad sighed. "Elizabeth, let's not start this morning with, 'You stopped paying the taxes.'" He pulled off his glasses slowly, like that would buy him time to rewrite the narrative. "It was a temporary oversight. 4 notices? A foreclosure warning? That's not temporary, Dad. That's willful neglect." Mom moved toward me, palms up. "Sweetheart, don't overreact. We were going to ask you for help this week anyway." Of course they were. Of course I was their plan. "You didn't ask," I said, voice rising now. "You hid it, like everything else, and you just assumed I'd cover it, like I always do." A pause. Then Mom's expression shifted. The concern drained from her face and was replaced by something sharper. Cold. "If you had told us you were planning to be difficult, we would have budgeted differently." I actually laughed. "So this is my fault now? Because I didn't pre-agree to be manipulated again?" Dad rubbed his temples. "Elizabeth, please. Let's not turn this into a scene. It's a delicate time. Amanda just got married. This isn't what she needs." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "She has a new husband. You have each other. But this house? These bills? This is my name now. My credit. My reputation. I'm done pretending that doesn't matter." They looked stunned. Not because of the words, but because I was finally saying them out loud. "I'm not writing a check," I said, rising to my feet. "Not today. Not for this. Not unless things change." Mom crossed her arms. "You'd let the house go under? After everything we've built here?" "You built debt," I said calmly. "I just happened to pay for it." Then I walked to the door. I turned back only once, to place the letter gently on the hallway table. "You have 15 days, I said. "Figure it out." Then I left. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. They say silence is golden. In my family, silence is gasoline. And I had just lit the match. By the time I returned home that night, my phone had already started buzzing. Voicemails, texts, even an email from my mother. Subject line, urgent, family matter. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what it would say. And I was right. The next morning, the knocking started. Not a polite knock, the kind of knock that insists on being answered. That makes your neighbors peer through curtains and your stomach turn before your feet hit the floor. I opened the door to find my mother standing on my porch, clutching her beige coat closed like she was shielding herself from the wind or from accountability. Her smile was brittle. I need to talk to you, privately. I stepped aside. She didn't wait for an invitation, just breezed in like it was still her house, too, like she hadn't accused me of being cold the last time we spoke. She walked straight to my living room, perched on the edge of the couch, and crossed her legs like we were in a therapy session I didn't remember booking. "So," she began, her voice tight, "is this really what you want?" "I'm not sure what you mean," I said, though I knew. She reached into her bag, pulled out the foreclosure letter, and held it up like evidence in a courtroom. This, refusing to help, letting things fall apart just to prove a point. I stared at her. "I'm not letting anything fall apart. You did that already. I'm just not cleaning it up this time." Her mouth tightened. "You always do this. You make everything about money." I actually had to laugh at that. "You mean the money I've been secretly giving you for years? The mortgage I've been paying without knowing I was the only one paying it? You're exaggerating." "No, Mom," I said quietly. "I'm finally not." She stood, the letter now crumpled in her hand. "You're punishing us. That's what this is. Punishing your father. Punishing me. And for what? For not praising you loudly enough? For celebrating your sister's wedding?" I opened my mouth, then closed it again. "Because what do you say when someone rewrites your boundaries as betrayal? You want to talk about punishment?" I asked, my voice trembling now. "Let's talk about guilt. About years of being expected to give without ever being asked. About being labeled difficult the second I stopped nodding and started asking questions." She blinked. Then, without missing a beat, she turned the blade. "You know," she said, her voice suddenly soft, "if the house goes under, it won't just be your father and me on the street. Amanda and Carter were going to stay here for a few months after the honeymoon, just until they found their own place." Of course they were. Of course I was the last to know. So that was the new spin. If I didn't rescue them, I wasn't just abandoning my parents. I was sabotaging Amanda's future too. "You were going to move them in without telling me?" I asked, stunned. "We didn't want to stress you," she said flatly. "It wasn't stress they were avoiding. It was accountability. I'm not the villain here," I said, standing. "I'm the one who's been holding this place together while you all planned parties and speeches. I'm the one who got left out of every decision but handed the check afterward." She looked at me for a long moment. Then she said the thing that would stay with me for a long time. "You've always had a hard time being part of the family when it's not about you." I went still. That's what she saw. That's what they all saw. Not a daughter who'd overextended. Not a woman trying to set boundaries after a lifetime of being leaned on. Just someone who wanted the spotlight. It wasn't just insulting. It was clarifying. I stepped back, opened the front door, and looked her square in the eye. "I'm not sabotaging this family," I said. "I'm saving myself from it." She didn't move, but she didn't fight either. She walked past me in silence, gripping her coat like armor. As the door shut behind her, I exhaled for what felt like the first time all week. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. And that was something she couldn't manipulate, couldn't shame, couldn't spin. That was mine. I didn't think Amanda would show up at my door. Not after the brunch. Not after the speech. Not after the months. Years of letting our parents lay everything on my shoulders while she floated above it all, blissfully unaware or conveniently ignoring the weight I carried. But there she was. A knock at dusk. Softer than Mom's. Hesitant. I almost didn't answer. Then I saw her through the peephole, standing there in leggings, and a hoodie with the word bride still faintly glittering across the chest. No makeup. No entourage. Just Amanda, looking, for once, like a girl who'd just woken up from a dream she couldn't afford. I opened the door but didn't invite her in. She didn't ask to come inside. She just looked at me with a kind of gentleness that made me uneasy, like she'd rehearsed this moment in the mirror. "Hey," she said. "Hey." A beat of silence stretched between us, like string pulled too tight. "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see right now." I didn't respond. I wanted to see where she was going. I need to tell you something," she said finally, eyes cast downward. "I knew. About the house. About the mortgage." There it was. No build-up. No preamble. Just the truth, delivered with the same breathlessness as one of her shopping hauls. I blinked. "You knew?" She nodded, fingers twisting the edge of her sleeve. "Not at first, but like a couple months ago. Dad mentioned something in passing about how you always come through, and I didn't get it. So I asked Mom, and she said not to worry, that you had it handled." I felt my spine straighten. "And you believed her?" She winced. "I did. I wanted to." A breeze picked up, fluttering a leaf across my porch. Amanda wrapped her arms around herself like it had gotten colder, though the air hadn't changed. "I told myself it was just temporary," she continued. "That maybe you were helping because you wanted to, or that you'd stop if it was too much." "You never asked," I said quietly. "No," she agreed, voice cracking. "Because I didn't want to know the answer." She glanced up at me then, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't see the golden girl. I saw a sister who looked a little ashamed. "I was so wrapped up in the wedding," she said, "I knew something felt off. But every time I brought it up, Mom would say, 'Let Liz handle it. It's what she does.' So I let you handle it." I exhaled slowly. "And during your toasts? Your brunch? The speeches?" She looked away. "I didn't plan those comments. I didn't mean for people to mock you. I didn't even realize until I saw your face at the reception. And then it was like everything I'd chosen not to see came crashing in. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted to scream. But the loudest part, the one that had sat through her careless jokes, her borrowed dresses, her whispered apologies after letting others humiliate me, just felt tired." Amanda stepped forward, stopping at the edge of the porch. "I'm not here to beg," she said softly. "I know you're angry. You should be. But I needed to tell you I knew. That I made a choice to ignore it. Because I hoped you'd keep doing what you always do." "Save you?" She nodded. "Yeah." Another silence. This one less brittle. "I can't fix what I let happen," she whispered. "But I am sorry." And somehow, I believed her. Not because it erased anything. Not because it healed the wound. But because it was the first time she didn't dodge it. I crossed my arms, leaning slightly against the doorframe. "So what now?" She shrugged. "I don't know. Mom wants me to convince you to pay the taxes. Dad's pretending he doesn't remember telling me anything. Carter doesn't want to get involved. Of course. I won't ask you to pay," Amanda said. "But I also know they'll keep pushing. Just be ready." I gave a dry laugh. "I've been ready. I just didn't know it yet." She smiled faintly. Not a happy smile. A knowing one. Then she turned to go. Before she stepped off the porch, I called out, "Amanda?" She paused. "If you'd said something earlier, if you'd told them you knew, and that it wasn't okay." "I know," she said. "I wish I had." And then she left. No grand hug, no dramatic tears, just the first thread of truth in a very tangled family fabric. And as the door clicked shut behind me, I realized something else. I wasn't waiting for their apology anymore. I was preparing my next move. It's strange how the most life-altering conversations sometimes happen in the most ordinary places. A week after Amanda's visit, I sat across from a lawyer named Marcy Tan in a strip mall office that smelled like printer ink and lemon disinfectant. There were no dramatic courtroom speeches, no slamming of gavels, just two women, 2 cups of black coffee, and a document that would sever years of silent expectations. "I've reviewed everything you sent," Marcy said, flipping through the manila folder I'd handed her. "Your payments, the unauthorized mortgage transfers, the back taxes. Elizabeth, this isn't just a family disagreement. This is a financial entanglement with real consequences." I nodded, fingers laced tightly in my lap. "I'm not looking to punish them," I said, voice steady. "I just want control of the house. I've already paid more into it than either of them. And if I'm going to save it from foreclosure, I want it under my terms. not through guilt or obligation. Marcy leaned back in her chair. Then we'll draft a power of attorney agreement. Immediate and irrevocable, at least until the debts are resolved. It gives you control over the house's finances, mortgage, taxes, repairs. If they want your help, they'll sign. And if they don't, she didn't flinch, then you let it go. You'll let it fall, and let the consequences be theirs. It sounded so final, so firm, exactly what I needed. The next day, I asked them to meet me at the house. No ceremony, no preamble. I told them it was about the foreclosure. That alone guaranteed their attendance. Mom arrived in a rush, lips pursed and still wearing her tennis whites from the club. Dad showed up 10 minutes late with a cup of gas station coffee and the wary posture of a man who sensed he was no longer in control of the narrative. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we used to eat spaghetti on Friday nights, where I did my high school homework, where Amanda once carved her initials and blamed it on me. I slid the document across to them. "What's this?" Dad asked, squinting at the header. "Power of attorney?" I said calmly. "I'll save the house. I'll pay the tax balance, but I won't do it blindly anymore. You sign this, and I take over full financial control. Mortgage, taxes, utilities. If it has to do with the house, it goes through me." Mom recoiled like I'd slapped her. "You can't be serious." "I'm very serious," I said. "If I'm going to keep paying for this place, then I need legal authority. Otherwise, I walk away." "You'd really let the house go into foreclosure?" she hissed. "I'm not letting anything happen," I replied. "I'm giving you a choice." Dad rubbed his chin. "This is a bit extreme, don't you think?" "No," I said. "What's extreme is using your daughter's money behind her back. What's extreme is hiding tax notices while planning a fireworks show. This is structure. It's accountability. It's what should have happened a long time ago." They stared at me, stunned, not because they didn't understand, but because they never imagined I'd be the one forcing the issue. After a long silence, Mom pushed the document back. "And if we say no, then the sheriff's sale goes through," I said. "And you'll have to explain to Amanda why she and Carter can't move in. You'll have to explain to your friends why you lost the house you've lived in for 30 years. And I'll sleep just fine." Dad exhaled, long and slow. "What do you even want out of all this?" he asked, softer now. "What's the endgame, Liz?" I looked him square in the eyes. "To be free of this dynamic. To know that if I'm giving, it's by choice, not manipulation. That I'm not being punished for being responsible." He said nothing. Mom stood abruptly and left the room. A few moments later, she returned with a pen. She signed first. No flourish, no comment. Just her signature on the line, like she was resigning from a role she never appreciated. Dad signed next. And just like that, it was done. I left with the signed agreement, folded neatly in my bag. No hugs, no tearful thank yous, no illusions. But for the first time in my life, I had leverage. And the power that came with it didn't feel greedy. It felt like peace. They arrived late, of course. Amanda, flustered and lip-glossed. Mom, stiff in a pressed blouse, clearly trying to look unfazed. Dad walked in last, holding a small notepad, like he was pretending to be prepared. I had arranged the living room in rows of chairs like a classroom. It felt absurd at first, but I needed structure. I needed this to feel official, not like another chaotic family discussion where the loudest voice won, and I ended up paying the price. I stood at the front, behind the coffee table, papers in hand, my voice steady, my heart pounding so hard it made the floor feel soft beneath me. "Thank you for coming. I know no one enjoys meetings, but I didn't ask you here for your comfort." Dad chuckled. Mom shot him a look. Amanda shifted in her chair, crossing and uncrossing her legs. I held up the first sheet. "This is a record of every dollar I've contributed to this family home since 2019. Mortgage payments, utility bills, repairs, property taxes. Every time you said it was just a short-term thing, and I said okay. I handed out copies. No one reached for them, so I dropped them on their laps. Total to date, $46,213, not including the wedding contributions." Amanda winced. "Now let's talk about the wedding. Here's a breakdown of every invoice I covered. Some in full, some half, none of which were approved by me before the charges were made. I flipped the page. Tent rental? $2,200. Horse-drawn carriage? $450. Fireworks? $750. 3 separate invoices for champagne I never drank. Total, $12,987. Dad looked like he wanted to interrupt, but I held up a hand. I'm not asking for reimbursement. That ship has sailed. What I am doing is redefining the terms under which I engage financially with this family from now on. Mom stiffened. Elizabeth, no, I said, locking eyes with her. You had your turn to talk. This is mine. I took a breath. From this moment on, I will not cover a single cost related to this household without a formal request in writing. Not through assumption. Not through guilt. Not because someone says, Liz will handle it. If you want help, you ask. Politely, clearly, and with full transparency. Amanda blinked rapidly. Her cheeks were flushed, but she didn't speak. If any account defaults again, mortgage, taxes, utilities, it's not my emergency. I've saved this house once. I won't do it again without full control and formal agreements. That includes what I already have in writing. Dad looked down at his notepad, as if hoping for a script. He said nothing. I stepped closer to the coffee table. And, for the record, I didn't come to this decision lightly. I came to it out of necessity. Because I love this family. But I won't bankrupt my sanity, my finances, or my self-worth for it anymore. The silence that followed was beautiful. For the first time in my adult life, no one interrupted. No one deflected. No one tried to hug it away. They just sat there, stunned. Amanda finally broke it. Liz, I didn't know it was this bad. I nodded. Because you didn't ask. Mom opened her mouth, closed it. Dad rubbed the bridge of his nose. So what now? I folded my papers and looked each of them in the eye. Now, you act like adults, you carry your weight, and if you can't, you ask, not expect. That's it. Those are the terms. No one argued. They didn't clap, they didn't cry, but for once, they listened. And for me, that was enough. The house didn't go into foreclosure. That's the headline, I suppose. The sheriff never came. The red stamped letters stopped. The past due balances were paid by me, but this time, under my terms. Power of attorney, written agreements, electronic alerts that pinged me the moment a bill came due. I created systems, structures, guardrails to keep their chaos from bleeding into my life again. The house was quiet the day I handed the cashier's check to the county office. Amanda had offered to come, to make it a sister errand, but I declined. Some things needed to be done alone. When I dropped the stamped receipt on the dining room table that evening, I didn't wait for a thank you. I didn't expect one. I was already moving forward. The gratitude came later, in small, unexpected ways. Amanda stopped by a few days after. No flowers, no grand gesture, just a simple knock and a quiet voice asking if I had a moment. She stood on my porch, holding a cup of coffee like she wasn't sure she had the right to be there. I know I said it already, she began, but thank you, really, for everything. She looked tired, less glossy, more human. I didn't see what you were carrying. I should have. I'm sorry. I nodded. Thanks. She didn't linger. She just placed the coffee on my railing and left. That was enough. Dad was harder to read. He never apologized. Not exactly. But 2 weeks after the meeting, he handed me a crumpled envelope with receipts tucked inside. Utilities, he said. Thought you might want to log them. It wasn't a performance. No pride. No dramatics. Just an act of quiet compliance. The way a man might feed a bird that finally bit back. And in that moment, I realized something. I had become the keeper of the family. Not in the emotional, nurturing way they always expected, but as the gatekeeper, the boundary setter, the accountant of fairness, the woman who'd made herself too indispensable to ignore. And yet, it didn't feel like a victory. Not entirely. It felt like a job I didn't apply for, didn't want, but couldn't seem to walk away from. Because even with the new rules, the spreadsheets, the silence that came with respect instead of dismissal, I still felt it. The weight, the watching, the constant pull to manage what others refused to face. The truth was, the more they trusted me, the more they leaned. And sometimes, In the quiet hours after another email alert or unexpected phone call, I wondered if power was just another kind of trap. Amanda texted a few days later, "We found a place. Tiny, but ours. Moving next month." I smiled. That was her growth. Quiet, but real. Mom never said the words, but she did start knocking before walking into my space. That was hers. Dad began writing checks instead of handing over crumpled receipts. Progress in his language. And me? I opened a separate account, one labeled only for me. No family connections, no shared access, just something small, sacred, and separate. My peace. It wasn't perfect. Nothing was. But for the first time, I wasn't drowning in someone else's mess. I was standing on my own shore. And even if I still heard their waves crash now and then, I knew I didn't have to wade in. Not unless I wanted to. Have you ever been the reliable one in your family? The one expected to hold everything together without breaking? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear how you handled your turning point. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life stories that don't shy away from what families sometimes hide.